have been working in the space as the Director of Policy in the Budget for Equality and Sustainable Development. We want to get your ideas on one, and you have two questions. One, on how can public budgets be designed to better support gender responsive climate action, and why is this alignment crucial for addressing systemic inequalities? Second question, so you have two. The second question is, how is it essential to integrate gender perspectives into national climate policies, and how can countries ensure these perspectives drive meaningful and equitable climate action?
Yes, thank you for this. And colleagues, I'm honored to be in this panel. I hope that many valuable outcomes will come for women all around the world. I just wanted to take a step back first and say that us from the feminist movement have been very deeply thought about all of these issues, not only the finance aspect, but very much the economic aspect. And so there are a lot of evidence by now that state that women are subsidizing the entire economy through their unpaid domestic and care work. And also there is another element that we call primitive extraction, that is stating that our entire productive system is relying on the extraction of this unpaid labor on women, but also the unpaid labor and the reproductive labor that indigenous peoples are doing, but also of local communities. And so we cannot just ignore these facts and think that small projects are gonna make a dent into the massive extraction that this current economic system is doing on the labor of women, on the shoulders of indigenous peoples, and on the destinies and fates of people from local communities. So we need to be real here that gender inequalities are macro, and therefore we need macro solutions. And this is why this is very much needed as a step back to analyze how we cannot keep on prioritizing economic growth over the well-being of people and the planet. And I've heard also comments here that we need to prioritize the market, and we need to prioritize what are the interests of investors. And we need to also be very clear that we have gone in the overshoot of 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries. We're not just talking about climate change. Climate change is one of them, but we have many others, including those that are part of the sister conventions precisely of the space in which that is hosting us. So we need to come clear with the comprehensive work that we need to do, especially with the coherent work that we need to do. And so therefore, I have some questions for you as well regarding how are we gonna when we are doing gender work, we are always suggesting to have differentiated measures, right, to address the specific needs of population. But this is the same at the global level. We need to do differentiated measures. We need to recognize that the global north is responsible for the excess emission of 92% carbon emissions, and also responsible for the 75% of the extraction of natural resources globally for its own consumption. Of it, 50% is from the global south to be consumed in the global north. So this tells us very clearly that our task is to promote differentiated actions also within the global north and within the global south. So for the global north, it's very evident that we need to start talking about degrowth. The global north needs to do a planned transition into the growing its economies, because that is the element that is driving an excess consumption of energy, and now it's transitioning into renewable energies, but it's expanding its energy base. So this is a concern for us as feminists from the global south, to keep on hearing about climate finance without tackling this element that has been mentioned already of planning. what are we planning for? So the global north needs to very much plan for the reduction of its economies, and also the global north and the south need to plan also for the reduction of concentration of wealth. And we know also that the multi-billionaires are about to consume the remaining carbon budget, the 70% of the remaining carbon budget. So we cannot keep on just ignoring and thinking they're going to be investing. We really need to address that as structural issue that is global and that is very much linked to the task at hand here. And again, if you're asking me, what does this have to do with gender? Well, everything, because women are shouldering all of the impacts of these macro structural elements. So we do have recommendations on those elements. And in the Global South cannot keep on providing the material for the Global North to have their Green New Deals, while the Global South is keep on having a massive gap in access to energy, to resources for its own community. So there needs to be an entire reconsideration, and very serious about when we're talking about financing. I would agree, we're talking about planning, talking about public policies and the quality of those policies, and having this bigger landscape in mind. That's when we turn to all of the recommendations that are related to enhancing a fiscal space at the national level. For instance, rejecting austerity measures, because austerity measures are the first context in which the social spending is shifted from what is needed precisely at the level of population, groups of population that are relying on public services. And so we know that climate action is then undermined when we are in a context of austerity measures. We cannot keep on talking, as the World Bank and the IMF, talking about debt sustainability, because we want to propose that we need to talk about sustainability of life. We cannot keep on talking about climate action in a context of countries that are totally indebted and that they cannot pay for their internal expenses. So we need to talk about these issues, and all of these issues: tax justice, debt justice, trade justice, those are feminist issues, and those are very much related to gender. So we cannot just keep on talking in isolation on what is my small project for women, when we are seeing that they are really the ones that are shouldering the larger impact. So we are saying, indeed, that when we're planning at the national level, at the sub-regional level, there are these principles that are under the UNFCCC, such as CBDR, equity, fair shares, right to development. They need to be, again, at the center of these conversations when we're doing the planning, because otherwise we come to promote micro measures for women when this is a macro agenda. I just wanted to give you some tips on how to promote these structural measures on gender, because we do need to tackle and to eradicate the sexual division of labor, especially when we're doing climate finance and climate projects. Everything goes to transport, infrastructure, energy. Those are very much fields in which men are concentrated. And so again, this will mean that all of the new money of the new revolution for our new economy will also be allocated in the hands of men, and women will still be shouldering all of the unpaid work. So we still need to think about the social reproduction dimension, and again, just raising that indigenous peoples are very much at the forefront of this agenda alongside women. So we need we cannot think just women and human rights on the other side and indigenous peoples on the other. We need to have a comprehensive approach. The youth are the second group of population globally that are doing unpaid domestic and care work. So that is another element for intergenerational equity, etc. So there are many elements that we need to consider. And then, yes, when you come to the budgeting, of course, I would agree that that's where you have all of the tools at hand, so that you can do a thorough planning, that you can do a transition. You have allocated budget specifically for the differentiated measures for group of population. It allows you to do specific indicators and throughout a cycle. But I also wanted to emphasize that this would not be enough if we are not also considering transitioning out of this growthist paradigm, in which we are thinking that economic growth is the priority of our economies. It cannot be. Economic growth is not linear. Economic growth is exponential, and this means exponential extraction, exponential inequalities, and again, overshooting the planetary boundaries. So we need to be serious about what is happening. If the entire world would consume like the global north, by 2050, we would need 9 planets So we cannot keep on talking about project. We need to talk about system change. And this is not about the small expenses on women. This is really about the large planning that global North countries and global South countries need to be doing. So just want to finalize also in saying that the complex the industrial military complex is another major element, because this is not only about money. How much money do you have? Are you spending on the military complex as opposed to how much can go to human rights and gender equality? No, it is about the linkages between the presence of industrial complex alongside development projects, because we're seeing in the global south, whenever there is a mega project, there is alongside a military base from global north countries. So again, this has to put us in a reflection of what type of international cooperation are we pursuing, and again, what type of funding are we giving. And then it leads me to another element in which the notion of GDP is leading us to spend on elements that are very harmful for the economy, but not necessarily are positive to get the outcomes that we want. And therefore, privatization and blended finance and bonds, those are very contested elements within the human rights field. Even in 2018, the Human Rights Rapporteur on Poverty and Human Rights said that the element that promoted the largest amount of human rights violation globally was privatization. Do you know that? So we cannot just have a blind sheet to the private sector. There is a lot of accountability to be done, a lot of regulation to be done, so that we can, of course, have an economy with all of the actors. But without those elements, we cannot prioritize the market above life, and we need to put at the center the primacy of public finance. I just want to close in saying that the Standing Committee on Finance has a major task this week in making the right linkages to the Enhanced Lima Work Program and Gender Work Program and its GAP, its Gender Action Plan, for the next years of implementation. So we very much put our trust in your hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the Emilia. We have eaten into the time for the discussions. We are supposed to go for coffee, I think. I would allow just two questions, quick questions,